Hello, my name's Ed, Old School Comic Book Reviews. Okay, this video was kind of inspired by, well, I saw Dr. Howlett's video. His video was where he asked, what inspired you to get into comics, and he showed a couple of the comics he had from when he was real young, a Mutant Ninja Turtles comic and an old issue of Wolverine. And then I saw Howler Mouse's video, which I thought, he gave a real kind of moving story talking about things that were going on with his family and things, when he was young and first got into comics. And I saw Ghost Critic's video, I saw Custom Brown Star's video, I saw Wasted Potential 616's video, and that kind of motivated me to kind of do a video. What's interesting, kind of sort of for me, is I kind of did a video similar to this, maybe about a year or so ago, because I saw a video that was put up by Ziploc Gory called Why I Like Comics and What They Mean to Me, and his video led me to a video by a young man named F.W. Waller, and that video led me back to a Sly Cooper 88, and a bunch of other people have done videos and so on and so forth. So, I think it's a really fun thing, and it's a really interesting thing to have people share stories and things like that. So, I'm going to try not to repeat myself too much from the other ones I've done. But, I got into comics, a long time ago. I was really young. I might have been like maybe 9, maybe 10 years old, and this is, back in the day or whatever. I just hanging out with a school friend or whatever. We went over to his house, and his brother, who was like 1 year older than us, just kind of pulled out their collection of comics, and most of them Marvel comics. But, and I was just fascinated. They just had all these different characters and all these artists and all these crazy stories that were going on. And I just got into it that way. Now, this is like back in the old days where you mostly got your comics at like a drugstore or the newsstand or a 7-Eleven or something like that, So, it was actually kind of fun and kind of a treat if I went to the store with my mother, and I found out that place actually had comics, to get her to buy me one or two. Sometimes she would, sometimes she wouldn't, but, this is when, comic books were just anywhere, and it's probably like the end of that sort of thing of, comic books are just a normal thing that a kid would be into, before it kind of sort of transitioned to this thing where it's more of this niche thing for certain types of, geeks or nerds or whatever, words you wanted to use or whatever. When we were young, there are two main places where we got comics. I used to live in Maywood, which was a near west suburb of Chicago, and the two places that that most of the kids who were kind of into comics at that time used to go actually there was a couple places on 5th Avenue in Maywood. One store, I can't remember the name of it. I can't remember the actual name of it just because for whatever reason we just never referred to it as the name of the store. The store was whatever, blah blah's such and such shop or whatever, but we always called it the Old Man. Like, what'd you do? Oh, I came back from the Old Man, or I got kicked out of the Old Man, or I bought this issue of the Fantastic Four. Where'd you get it? Oh, I got it at the Old Man, And as you can probably guess, it was called the Old Man because an old man ran the store. It was basically a magazine store, a magazine shop / cigar shop. So, like, in the display window, he might have 1 or 2 cigar boxes or whatever, and then he'd have various issues of whatever, Guns and Ammo or whatever, or Sports Illustrated. Then he'd have some Marvel Treasury editions or something like that sitting out there. Then he had a spinner rack of Marvel, DC, Archie type comics, and then on the, I guess maybe the south wall was, just this, just a long, magazine stand, magazine racks or whatever with all the normal stuff you're looking for, Time, Newsweek, what have you. and he also, and let's see here, and he also had on the far wall was like where it was like Playboy or whatever, and then like all the cigars and stuff like that were like on the counter and behind the counter and stuff like that. One interesting thing of it is like it was notorious for like kicking people out of the store. Oh, well, let me go back, because the thing about this guy is he was an older gentleman. Thinking about it, he had to have been in his late 50s, early 60s maybe, and he rarely if ever spoke, you know. And when he did speak, it was just kind of out of the corner of his mouth. Now, we were all like I said, 19 years old. We didn't figure it out till a couple years later, where we figured he must have had a minor stroke or something like that. But yeah, like he rarely spoke to you, you know, unless it was to tell you no about something. Most of the time he just would literally grunt at you. Oh, and what I was going to get to, the big thing about it, about going to this guy's store is, he kicked us out of the store quite frequently, you know, just because, you know, we're grubby kids just standing around trying to read comic books or whatever. And what he would do is, you know, you're reading a comic and he'd grunt at you to get your attention, and then he'd wave at you he'd motion towards the door, you know, with his thumb, you know, like hit the road, Jack, you know what I mean? So he'd go, and you know, like I said, shake his thumb at you. Sometimes he made a broad, sweepy motion. Sometimes he just stick his thumb at you and then like wiggle it into the direction of the door, like, yeah, you know what this is. Get going, you know. And that was just always pretty funny to us, you know. We would always be like, oh man, I was at the old man. He kicked me out of the store. He did. Oh yeah. And then somebody would invariably ask, was he reading porn? Yeah, he was reading porn. That was another thing. This guy was always like looking at like, you know, Playboy or Hustler or something like that. I can only remember maybe once or twice where I actually seen him reading like, you know, the newspaper or something like that. But 9 times out of 10, he was always looking at some nudie magazine or something like that. And like I said, as 10-year-old kids, we just thought that was the funniest thing ever. We don't know nothing about no porn or nothing about no nothing, but we knew we was back there reading Playboy, and we just thought that was funny. The other place, but just to cap off the old man thing, I thought it was pretty, you know, I'm making these jokes about this guy reading his nudie magazines. You know, what's funny to me when I was like 10 or 11 years old, but a few years later, I find out about Heavy Metal magazine. For people who don't know, Heavy Metal magazine, they still make heavy metal, but it was a fantasy science fiction magazine, and a lot of it like reprinted like, you know, European artists and things like that. But the thing is, you would get nudity in that magazine every once in a while. So, you know, on one hand, you know, I'm like 10 years old, I think this old guy is funny. But then I'm like 13, 14 years old. I'm like, oh, what's going on here? Am I going to get in trouble for looking at this? I don't know. And I was actually kind of nervous one time because Marvel Comics came out with their version of it, which was called Epic Illustrated. I don't think they had some nudity, but it wasn't as much. You know, you were pretty much guaranteed, you know, some nudity in Heavy Metal magazine on a pretty regular basis. Sometimes you had it in Epic, sometimes you didn't. But at first I was going to say I was kind of nervous because I'm like, I don't know. He might tell me I have to be 16 to buy it, but, you know, he let me pay for it and buy it, so it was no big deal. And after that, I was in there buying that stuff all the time, but you know, there you go. The other store that was like, you know, on the next block was a Rexall drugstore. And, you know, the comics were on a spinner rack that was directly in front of the counter. And then, you know, they had their magazine racks and stuff too. And they would have, over on the magazine side, they would have like the black and white Marvel magazines, like Marvel Premiere and Marvel Super Special and stuff like that. Super Special is actually in color. And they would have like, you know, Creepy and stuff like that. And and they would also have like, you know, they would have like the Treasury editions and stuff like that too. Thing about Rexall was, if you bought like just a normal comic book, a normal issue of like, you know, Spider-Man or Batman or whatever, in the corner right where the price was, there would be a P there. It would either say P or it'd say PP. And it was there, I guess, the owner or whomever put it there so the cashier knew that that was the price, you know. Like, I don't know, I guess they couldn't make it out, that big thing that said 50 cents on it. I don't know. But yeah, I don't have the original comics I had when I was a kid. I've replaced them. I've replaced you know, some of those comics, but for a long time I had all these issues of, like, you know, New Teen Titans and some Daredevil comics that have this P on there, you know. Around that time I remember one of my other friends saying, like, oh yeah, we don't go to you know, Old Man or Rexall anymore. We go to this other store, and there was this other store that was on the same street, but it was like way south, and I had to, like, actually get on my bike to go there. But it was a really nice store. It was well lit, you know, they had nice people working in there. And it was like it was a magazine store as well, but it just had such a great variety of everything. And you know, so I just started going there for my comics and stuff like that. And let's see here. So now we're kind of transitioning into like the 80s or whatever. And actually, like I said, this is when the comic shop started to take over from the kind of newsstand distribution. I should probably mention that same kid and his brother, not the kid and the brother that got me into comics, but a different kid with his different brother who told me about some store downtown where it's like, oh yeah, you know, they've got all these old comics, and I can't remember what the name of it was, but you know, that became the whole idea of, oh yeah, now I can be a collector, you know, now I can go get those issues, you know, that I missed, and all that sort of thing. But the next big jump was, or switch, or whatever you want to call it, is the early 80s now, and finding out about a store called Larry's, which was over on Devon in Chicago, which was like way on the north side. It took us, I mean, we weren't old enough to drive, so we had to take, like, you know, a bus, a train, and another bus to get down there. Or a bus, or actually we took a bus and then a train and then switched. That's how we got over there. And the way we found out about Larry's on Devon was, these two other kids I was friends with, you know, starting high school, those guys were kind of getting into like punk rock and stuff like that, and they invited me to go along with them to go see a hardcore punk rock band called the Dead Kennedys. And I can't remember the name of the place that they were playing at. I want to say COD. I don't know if that sounds right. But it was literally down the street. And these two kids were into comics too, you know. So somehow one of them just peeped the idea that, hey, there's a comic book store, you know, down the street a bit, you know. So that's how we found out about Larry's. And Larry's was pretty interesting. It was, I mean, Larry's was actually great if you were into like collecting comics, as you know, the collecting aspect of like, man, I want to get this run, or I want to find this missing issue or whatever, because it was all there, you know. I filled in lots of holes from, you know, old, you know, filling in all my Avengers, filling in, you know, missing issues I had of the X-Men and the Fantastic Four, you know, rediscovering, like, you know, old Captain America comics that I, you know, either missed or ignored when they were coming out. Those old Jungle Actions with the Don McGregor, Black Panther and stuff like that. And plus he had lots of like the alternative comics and things like that, you know, the independent comic book companies of that day, you know, which were, instead of like Dynamite and Dark Horse and Image like we got now, it was like Pacific Comics, First Comics, Eclipse Comics. Those were the big ones, you know. And then Marvel was kind of doing their thing with that, with the Epic line, but you know, that's a whole another subject. We and my one friend used to kind of make jokes about Larry, because he kind of had that kind of Simpsons guy disposition sometimes, where it's like somebody would come in not really knowing what was going on, and they'd ask him some question, and he'd be like, oh, you know, don't make me get out of my seat. I mean, he never said that, but you know, he had obviously been there sitting down comfortably watching a Cubs game or whatever, and here comes some novice asking him, where's, where's Doctor Who comics or whatever, Tom Baker Doctor Who, whatever. Larry's, that store has not been there for a while. I don't know what's in its spot. I think there's like a restaurant or something like that. But yeah, there was Larry's, and then the other place we used to go to, which was a lot closer to where we lived, was Rick's in Oak Park. Rick was a real friendly guy. He was just a nice guy, totally into the comics, totally willing to talk to people. He talked to kids who came in the store. He talked to adults who came in the store. He always seemed to have something kind of positive or optimistic to say about, whatever. I think the only thing about Rick's, and this is getting into like the maybe mid-'80s-ish, is that sometimes, the store was supposed to open at a certain time, and for a period of time, he was coming in like real late. We're like, oh no, Rick was supposed to open the store at 2, it's 2:30, he's still not there, and there'd be a group of like young people waiting to get in and stuff. I think later, and I don't know how true it was, but I guess later we had heard that his wife or girlfriend or fiance had like just had a kid, right? Had just had a baby. So they were like, oh, okay, no wonder he's late, That's something like that's going on in your life. That's gonna take, priority a little bit over, getting the newest, whatever, X Factor on the stand, right at 2 o'clock or whatever. That's pretty much it. Thanks for listening to my little trip down memory lane. And everybody have a good day. Wow, I rambled on a lot longer than I thought I was. Thanks. You have a good one.